Now, England's countryside is peppered with old historic castles, ancient ruins and fine country houses. And today we are at one such place. Now, there's no doubt a lot of secrets, a lot of family tragedies, a lot of things have happened behind these walls and behind many of the other walls across England. But today we're here to uncover just one story. A story of a cursed skull, bricked up, not put on display and not spoken about until today. In old England, long before electric lights banished the dark, ghost stories thrived by candlelight. Shadows danced across timber beams, creeping along walls like silent witnesses. Families whispered of cursed relics, enchanted rings, haunted paintings, even wandering skulls. Between 1670 and 1700, England saw a surge of cheap ghost pamphlets, short, inexpensive booklets reporting supernatural sightings, ghostly forms, eerie lights, desperate spirits seeking justice or revealing secrets. These miniature newspapers blended together oral folk tales with real sightings. Not unlike today, people would have had mixed feelings about the paranormal, some treating these pamphlets as silly little stories, whereas others were perhaps more careful, using these tales as cautionary warnings about what can linger in the darkness if you're not careful. Now, most of these pamphlets have faded into obscurity, but their stories sometimes remain, not as fading folklore, but as a physical echo hidden. And here we have one, in the house's very walls, the cursed remains of a young girl, sealed inside for centuries. Have you ever wondered what secrets linger behind stone and mortar, when something is buried so deep it cannot be forgotten? Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Claire and this is the Wanderlust Way. Firstly, let me say thank you to everybody that supports this channel by liking, commenting, subscribing and sharing. Honestly, everything that you're doing is helping the channel to grow and I'm really grateful for that, so thank you. But it's also allowing me to bring you on more adventures and share the stories that I find in these places with you on this channel, so yeah, thank you. Now today we are not too far from the seaside town of Bridlington in the East Riding of Yorkshire, and we're here at a fine country house called Burton Agnes Hall. So there's something a little bit spooky, a little bit paranormal going on here, and today we're going to uncover that story. So that's enough waffle, let's wander. Our story begins with Anne Griffith, who was the daughter of the man that owned this hall. She was the youngest of three sisters, but Anne was said to absolutely adore this place. In 1598, Sir Henry Griffith commissioned a grand new home for his family, a house to stand the test of time. He chose no ordinary builder. The man tasked with bringing his vision to life was none other than the Queen's own master mason, a craftsman trusted by Elizabeth I herself. Sir Henry was a man of standing, Justice of the Peace, High Sheriff of Staffordshire, and later appointed to the powerful Council of the North, a role that may well have inspired the construction of a residency worthy of his rising influence. But like so many men of his time, his fortunes were not without turmoil. During the First English Civil War, he threw his allegiance behind the king, only to later surrender to Fairfax after the Battle of Marston Moor. In a difficult twist of loyalty, he took the National Covenant and paid a heavy price, fined steeply by Parliament. And yet, amid all the political manoeuvring and ambition, there was joy, a child's joy. Katherine Anne Griffith, the youngest of Sir Henry's three daughters, is said to have watched the new hall rise with absolute delight. Every stone laid, every detail carved into oak and limestone, she saw not just walls, but a future. She would sit for hours, they say, imagining herself wandering through grand corridors, fingers trailing along polished banisters. She pictures herself at the tall windows, gazing out over the gardens, the same gardens that bloom with colour today. While we're lucky enough to see Burton Agnes Hall in all its finished splendour, Anne saw it all in her mind first. In her imagination, it was already perfect. Today, sunlight spills across the same finely crafted floors, glinting off intricately carved woodwork and rich tapestries. We walk where she once dreamed.
One summer's evening, Anne Griffith decided that she was going to visit some friends at a nearby hall. After enjoying their company for a few hours, she decided to head back home to Burton Agnes Hall. But something was waiting for her in the dark.
The story varies here, but most say that as the summer's day waned, 14-year-old Katherine Anne made her way back home. The warm air was still, the world hushed, but ahead, two figures emerged from behind yew hedges, cutting off her path. Anne paused, offering a polite greeting, but they closed in. Mistaking her kindness for innocence, they demanded her ring, a treasured gift from her mother. When she refused, one of the attackers struck her sharply across the head. The impact sent her to the ground, stunned and bleeding. Her assailants fled. Stunned villagers found Anne on the roadside and carried her, unconscious and fevered, back to the hall. There her family tended to her through long, anxious hours. Days passed as she drifted between delirium and coherence, surrounded by the elegance she treasured so much. Anne remained at Burton Agnes to recover, and those silent days and nights, the hall bore witness to grief and prayer, hope and fear woven into its walls.
Anne died, sadly, just a few days later. The doctors said it must have been the shock, but her sisters were about to have a shock of their own, as Anne used her final dying breath to whisper one last chilling request.
As Anne's fevered breaths filled the room, her sisters circled her bedside, worry etched on every face. At only 14 years old, she barely had the strength to whisper, but what she said next would shape the hall's fate forever. Eyes heavy with pain, Anne spoke the words, "I would not rest unless part of me could remain in this beautiful home, as long as it shall last." When pressed for detail, she added, "When I'm gone, remove my head and keep it here in the hall." Her sisters, hearts torn, pledged to honour her dying wish. They held her hands and vowed, despite the horror that such an act might bring. Yet when sorrow settled over the hall and Anne's light finally faded, grief and fear clouded their promise. Instead of following through on her dying wish, her sisters buried her whole in the nearby churchyard, unable to face the act that she had asked of them.
They tried to forget their promise, but the house would not let them. Doors slamming in the night, footsteps on the stairs, classic poltergeist activity. Eventually, even some of the servants started to flee, and at that point the sisters decided it was time to revisit Anne's grave.
After Anne's burial, Burton Agnes Hall was quiet, but not for long. Whispers began first. Cold draughts where no windows were open, strange footsteps echoing through empty rooms, and then sightings. Anne, dressed in blooded clothing, was seen in the Queen's state bedroom, her spirit appearing when least expected. Her reflection seen in mirrors, her fury rattling cupboards, and finally blood-curdling screams heard in the dead of night. Terrified, her sisters turned to the local vicar. During their desperate meeting, the truth came out. A promise had been broken. And so, on the vicar's advice, her grave was opened. What they found inside was said to horrify them. While the rest of Anne's body remained intact, her head had somehow detached and was now completely fleshless. The sisters removed the skull and brought it back into the hall, and just like that, well, the disturbances, they just stopped. But the story didn't end there. Over the years, skeptics, perhaps unnerved by the idea of such a grisly relic in a noble home, tried to be rid of it. Some claimed it was quietly buried in the garden, but the hauntings came back. In one tale, a maid, fed up with the grotesque object, hurled the skull from a top-floor window. It landed in a hay cart passing below. The startled horses froze, refusing to move, until the skull was carefully returned to its place inside the hall. Now, whether you believe in curses or not, one thing is certain: peace returned only when this young girl's skull was home.
Now, one of the legends is that the skull disappeared, and some say it's bricked up inside this house.
This is not the first tale we've encountered of a cursed skull. If you watched my Haunted Pubs of Edinburgh video, you might remember the infamous skull at the Star Bar, said to bring misfortune and even death if moved. And stories like this aren't as rare as you might think. Across Britain, folklore is filled with tales of haunted remains, objects that refuse to be forgotten. But there's something unsettlingly real about this one. The official Burton Agnes Hall website confirms it. Anne Griffith's skull is still inside the house. Nobody knows where it is for sure, but it's rumoured to be built into one of the old walls, perhaps in the Great Hall. This is not just a story anymore, it's a presence, sealed within stone, hidden behind history, and maybe, just maybe, still watching.
So that's it for today's ghostly video. What does everybody think? Do you believe that objects can be cursed? Do you believe the skull of Anne is still resting in this hall? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, everybody, I've been Claire. This has been The Wanderlust Way. Thank you to everybody for watching. Don't have nightmares, and I'll see you on the next episode.